call to action is being heightened as an interfaith group backs a Rockland County Assemblywoman's push to alleviate the sectarian split within East Ramopo School District. The question is, will the governor step into this ring? And tensions rise in Eastern Europe where masked men are here accused of handing out anti-Semitic leaflets ordering Jews to register with the government or face deportation. Do we really have to go around the globe to witness anti-Semitism? Recent events show we don't have to look too far here, alive and well, right here on U.S. soil. And was the White House really playing it cool when Vice President Joe Biden jumped the gun with his same-sex marriage endorsement back in 2012? Well, Times investigative reporter says no, and she's got some quotes to prove in her new book. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us this Friday evening, April 18th. And tonight, we start in our region in Rockland County, where a fight over East Ramopo Sectarian School District, it has tempers flaring as it has now for years. The district, which is almost unlike any other in the state, located just 30 miles north of New York City. School administration, 9 members of the school board, run by Orthodox Jewish and Hasidic men. Now, many of the students in that population attend religious schools called yeshivas. The district has about 21,000 private school students and only 9,000 public school students who are mostly Black, Latino, and Haitian. The school board has been blamed for financial mismanagement and cutting public school programs like art, music, sports, and has also slashed about 400 teaching positions. A newly formed interfaith group called the Rockland Clergy for Social Justice is now calling for intervention from the state. The group, they met Tuesday and said change in governance is long overdue. 500 people have also signed a petition calling for state intervention. Rabbi Ari Hart, who is a part of the group, said the needs and concerns of one community must not steamroll the needs and concerns of another community. Now, Rockland County Assemblywoman Ellen Jaffe, she's thrown herself behind the push for state oversight for years, saying, quote, actions of the school board have led to the disruption and, in effect, the dismantling of much of the public school system. None of the other 7 Rockland school districts has undergone the reduction and elimination of education services to the extent of East Ramopo, whose students find it difficult, if not impossible, to meet New York State requirements for a sound basic education. All right, we're going to start with this topic here tonight. I want to bring in our panel, certainly the right folks to talk about the issue, joined by Dominic Carter, political journalist, author, and Rockland resident. Yes. C. Scott Vanderhoff, attorney and former Rockland County executive. Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent, has been covering this story for a long time. And Democratic New York State Assemblywoman Shelley Mayer, who does not represent, I think thankful for her case, this Rockland district here, but also, in addition to representing the city of Yonkers in Albany, worked in the DA's office, the Attorney General's office, and you were dealt with some issues of equity, certainly, as it came to this. Okay. You've lived through this. Thankfully, the new county executive is dealing with this headache as it relates to you. But to that end, do you understand the growing concerns here that it's an unlevel playing field, has been for a while, and the interests of one community who dominate the school board are really being driven out of self-interest, not for the broader population that uses the public schools? Do they have a point?
Yes, they do. And full disclosure here, my wife is an art teacher in that district, and so she is teaching the students. And I get feedback from that perspective as well. But look, this has not just happened recently. This has been going on for years. Recently, when I just about 2 or 3 years ago, I got my Commissioner of Human Rights to put both sides together to say, look, this is a volatile situation. The education standards are not being met. You need to talk to each other because remember, the Orthodox and the ultra-Orthodox are very insular in what they do. We could not make headway. And the problem has gotten worse. And this is despite the fact that some of the leaders on that school board have said, look, we understand that others in the community and public education is important, but it has not been followed up by action. And that's why the call to the state is appropriate.
Dominic, you've seen firsthand here this percolate here. Firsthand. And you're talking not only passionate parents and people involved here, but it has created a pronounced rift, and it's us and them in many cases. As ugly as that sounds, that's where it's degenerated to, hasn't it?
Well, if the county executive couldn't make any headway, and this man is an excellent public service, then that should show just how bad the problem is. We're talking about total mismanagement, complete mismanagement. We're dealing with a district that's the board is run by the Orthodox community. They are very organized, and that's something that we want to encourage for people to get involved with the process, the political process, in this case, the local school board. But we're talking about a district that has almost become all black now. My son graduated from this school district 4 years ago. My daughter attended this school district. And it's a situation, when I say mismanagement, the board is trying to sign off public school buildings for $1. And the FBI has had to step in and raid the off. That's how bad it is. So the question becomes, why would anybody in their right mind, if everything is on the up and up, sign a public school building away for $1? And this has literally been happening in this school district, East Ramopo. So Orthodox community completely running the school board. It turned out in mass numbers to vote. You can't blame anybody for that. And
not only turn out mass numbers, but vote as a block.
As a block.
And it's not just for school board elections, for political elections. And let's face it, you know better than anybody, that has huge political sway, not only in the county, but even statewide. We saw it in Senate races. We've seen in other races. They vote 99% in many cases for the candidate of the choosing that gets the blessing in the community, and obviously there's influence that's carried with that. That's huge.
Yeah, it is, and I have had their support, and I've not received the report, and I've won and lost under both conditions. The community itself has needs, just like everybody, but the bottom line of this is that they are not perceiving and acting on the needs of children of color in that community. And we're talking about an enormous Haitian population, an enormous Central American population, kids who can't speak English. And they're being denied art, they're being denied music, which is required.
And also additional funding for the programs for literacy, especially now when you have all the English standardized, where the schools get measured on performance as well.
Exactly. And they're denied in supplies, and it goes to this question of budgeting and the question of the process. Now, some of them, with respect, say, look, we understand our need to serve the public, but it's not come to that. And at some point, the state education department has got to intercede on behalf of the children who make up that public school population.
Can I bring in on that? Because who is the right person to get involved?
The state education department, I totally agree, has refused to get in. My colleague Ellen Jaffe from the Assembly, who's done a terrific job of advocating. In fact, all the Rockland folks have asked state ed to jump in.
Why haven't they?
I don't know, and at this point, I don't think anyone should care. That's why going to the governor is the right thing. He is the kind of person who should step in and say, wait a minute, this is unacceptable. They have a legal responsibility as members of this board to have their primary obligation be to the children who attend, not to the children who do not attend or the taxpayers who do not attend. And I think only the governor can solve it now. I think state ed has completely abdicated its responsibility, not for lack of trying. These folks have had bills. We've had several bills pending in our House to make state ed take this school over, and I think they have the ability to do so already. They haven't. So now, credit to them for leaning on the governor, because he's the only one who really has the gumption and the ability to step in.
Do you think he has the want to?
I hope he does. I hope he does. I think the kids are at risk if they haven't been damaged already.
Even beyond the school system, Scott, correct me if you think I'm wrong on this. It's a problem of interdependence and independence. The Hasidic community in New Square is independent from the rest of the community in a myriad of different ways, except in a few where it crosses over. I mean, they are members of the East Ramopo School System, but really it's a very tiny fraction of the student population or the student age population from New Square who actually attend Ramapo or East Ramapo public schools. So it's in very specialized cases where the interests actually seem to overlap. And I've always wondered why there isn't just a certain amount of independence there. If New Square wants to behave independently from East Ramapo, form their own school district, form their own government, and separate from the outlying communities, I don't think they want to in a lot of cases because they tend to benefit from these things.
Well, that's the point. Where do the dollars flow?
Right.
Okay, the dollars flow to busing, they flow to disabled They flow to certain areas that are in particular in need in some of these communities. And before people say, oh, they don't need it, they're cheating, it's not that. It's that they need, just like public school kids need, and there's got to be a fairness issue there. And you're right, Andrew, that money flow is what keeps them. They fund those areas, but in other areas they're not funding. And of course, there are parents who are there who are very aggravated, who have children there. But this has also become a race issue because, and that's where the NAACP comes in. And now you're talking about things going back to Hilburn in the 1950s and 40s, where it has desegregation, Hilburn being a small village in the county of Rockland. So this has taken on not just the political or the financial, but it gets down to an issue of black and white, and Orthodox and non. And I have to tell you that this issue in Rockland has divided the population enormously. And it's not Jew versus, it is a lot of the conservative and Reform Jews are very upset because it brings about anti-Semitism across the board. And that reverberates in the communities throughout Rockland County.
And not for this conversation, but Andrew's attempt to cover a story more than once, and it's like a different world. And people don't realize it. It's a different world, and people see little anecdotes that women don't wear ankle-length dresses. What's happened in broad daylight, right? There'll be a stone coming your way. Andrew's tailed, literally, because he doesn't belong in the community. Andrew's Jewish.
Without a camera there, where the police called on us just from walking down a public
street.
street.
But in fairness, though, Richard, living in the community, you get used to it. Or at least I've been used to it. I've been in the community for 20 years, and you're used to seeing Hasidic men on holy days when they're not allowed to get into a vehicle, walking, and the women and the children. So you get used to it.
I'm not discussing it. And one of the best things about our country, especially this time of year, is everybody, whatever their faith, should be able to enjoy it in any which way they want here. But we're seeing a situation play out where you have and have-nots.
It's awful.
With public dollars.
The FBI should take over. That's how bad it is. And we're not having equity here, and that's just not right.
Just one other thing, Richard, though. I think it's very important that you not take the entire communities of New Square and Kaiser and others and simply say, you know, those communities, because it's not the communities themselves. Often, most often, these communities are full of wonderful people who are in fact following the law, etc. It is some of the leaders, and particularly that school board, you know, who are taking whatever instructions or whatever they think they're doing, are the ones that have to be taken to task. And that's why I think the governor or the education department or a combination have to come in because of the education discrimination. That's where it comes down to.
Well, we'll of course continue to follow this. We'll see if the governor takes this up. But the county executive mentioned one of the consequences of this, unfortunately, could be anti-Semitism increasing, and that's going to be the subject of our next segment. U.S. denouncing a disturbing leaflet in eastern Ukraine. Many of you by now have heard about this, ordering Jews to register with the government or face deportation. Talk about harkening back to one of the worst chapters in global history. Well, this chilling act of anti-Semitism shedding light not only acts of hate overseas, but we're going to show you what's going on right here in the States as well. Is anti-Semitism more prevalent than maybe a lot of us want to think it is? Our panel will weigh in on that one as well when we return.